I've been reading your journal entries this week, and a number of you have had questions about the distinction between rote and inflexible knowledge. This short video not only explains that distinction, but provides a broader context for understanding types of knowledge and also their relationship to understanding. Before defining these forms of knowledge, I'm going to back up and take a big picture look at the nature of thinking, the nature of knowledge, and the nature of understanding. This quote that you see on the screen by John Dewey, a well-known American philosopher of education, I think really strikes at the heart of what it is we have when we have an understanding of some concept or idea. I'm going to read the quote. To grasp the meaning of a thing, an event, or situation is to see it in its relations to other things, to note how it operates or functions, what consequences follow from it, what causes it, what uses it can be put to. In contrast, what we call the brute thing, the thing without meaning to us, is something whose relations are not grasped. Basically what Dewey is saying is that when we understand something, we see, we apprehend, we discern how it is connected to other things, how it operates, how it functions, how it's related to things that might be like it or unlike it, what consequences there are if something functions in a particular way. So understanding is predicated on the idea that you have not just single facts disconnected from one another in your head, but those facts are connected in some rich knowledge base. In the article Inflexible Knowledge, the First Step to Expertise, Dan Willingham introduces these three terms: rote, inflexible, and flexible knowledge. He's one of the few people who actually distinguishes rote from inflexible knowledge. I've tried to pare down the definitions and give you something to hang on to on this slide. Rote knowledge is nothing more than the information or knowledge that we have that's the result of rote memorization. And what Willingham is saying is that when we know something rotely, we essentially have no understanding of the concept or of the idea. Essentially, understanding is zero. Now, you really can't measure things like that, but it's safe to say that when you only have something memorized in a rote way, you really can't put it to use, and often you can't even explain the idea to somebody else if they were to ask you. My favorite example from my own experience as a child is learning to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. We did this every day in elementary school, starting in first grade. And I think it's pretty much true that if you were to walk up to and listen carefully to any first grader who's reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, you get a pretty strange version of it. Because typically, children have very little idea of what they're saying. They certainly have no appreciation whatsoever about what a pledge is and what allegiance means, nor do they comprehend the abstract ideas that are in the Pledge of Allegiance. So that's a case in which I'm pretty sure for quite a long time I had rote knowledge of the Pledge of Allegiance, but really no understanding of it. In contrast to rote knowledge is inflexible knowledge. And here's where Willingham starts to grant that most of the time when we learn something, we don't learn it in a completely rote way. We have some degree of understanding, but it tends to be limited to the context in which it was learned. What I noticed in your journal entries, many of you were able to identify situations in which you recognized that you had inflexible knowledge. Often you refer to a math class in which in a classroom situation you're able to work problems in a particular way, achieve some kind of facility or fluency with working those problems, but then when asked to solve a word problem later in some other context in which the equation or the formula or the concept that you learned is appropriate, you can't do it. That's inflexible knowledge. You have some understanding of what the concept is, but not enough to take it out of that context and use it in new contexts. And then finally, flexible knowledge is knowledge in which you have a deeper, more abstract understanding of the idea and then can apply it in a variety of contexts. That essentially is the difference between these three concepts. One, rote, no meaning, Inflexible, some meaning, but limited to the context in which it was learned. And flexible knowledge means you have some deeper abstract understanding and you can apply it in a variety of contexts. It might be more helpful to think about these three forms of knowledge as being on a continuum with respect to depth of understanding or degrees of understanding. It's important to recognize that people don't understand or not understand something. Understanding is not an either-or phenomenon. Instead, we have degrees of understanding or depth of understanding. I may understand a little bit about a particular idea, but not as much as an expert. In some cases, I may be clueless. I may have almost no understanding of it. So just in trying to describe understanding this way, you get a sense that there is some sense in which our understanding develops over time and it progresses from a state of pretty much ignorance about a particular idea to greater and greater depth of understanding. So on one end of this continuum, the rote end, is rote knowledge. We can also refer to that knowledge as very shallow, and that the individual on toward this end of the continuum is a novice, a beginner, someone who doesn't know very much about a particular idea or a particular concept or topic. So the rote knowledge, again, refers to almost no meaning whatsoever. Another term that's been used for rote knowledge is inert knowledge. Inert meaning can't do anything with it, just sits there. In this large middle ground of the continuum is inflexible knowledge. As we develop some familiarity with ideas, we start to also develop some kind of understanding of it. Going back to Dewey's distinction, we start to see how it's related to other ideas that are similar to it. We see how it fits into a larger knowledge base that we have. But that knowledge may still be inflexible in the sense that it's tied to a context. It's easy to see this in a classroom situation where kids get pretty good at remembering material that they're supposed to for tests and are able to reproduce it on tests. And they're able to reproduce it sometimes in a rote form, which makes you very suspicious that they don't understand it, but sometimes even in a paraphrase form where it starts to sound like, oh yeah, these kids have it now. When in fact they may not really have it. What they're able to do is see in a very limited sense what the idea means, but they may still not be able to apply it in a new circumstance where it belongs or where it's appropriate. And then finally, if we work hard enough and we have a lot of practice, we start to develop flexible knowledge, sometimes referred to as deep understanding. And that simply means that now we do have this abstract understanding of a particular principle or concept or theory or idea, and we can use it as we go out into the world and see it operating in various circumstances, or we can apply it in various circumstances to interpret what's taking place or to solve new problems. This is the kind of advanced expertise that we would like everyone to achieve, but it's a hard-fought battle. Developing high levels of expertise, especially in a lot of different subject areas, is really quite a challenging proposition for most of us. And as we'll see later on in the class, that developing a high level of expertise in one area is something that takes actually many, many years to achieve. So we have to approach this a little bit realistically when we're thinking about everyday schooling and what we're teaching. We may have a sense of the kind of expertise we want our students to develop, and I hope that expertise is in some ways advanced. I hope that we're all striving to enable students that we have to be able to not just parrot back information that they learned or paraphrase it, but to be able to make that part of their own thinking process and apply it and use it in circumstances where it's useful.